Hello, friends. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly, and this is Owning Authenticity. I have a very special video for you today where I have recorded this in two different times. Part one of the telling happened on August 2nd at a sacred circle. This was my share to kick off the sacred circle that day. And part two and 3 and 4 are recorded on August 14th. So almost 2 weeks later, and all talking about something that kicked off with the Leo new moon that happened 2024, August of 2024, related to my dream, my creative dream, my vision of giving a TED Talk. Okay, so I have known since I was 7 years old that I was a professional public speaker, that this was what my life was going to eventually become. 7. And I would say I was probably 25, 26 the first time I had the vision of standing on the red dot and giving a TED Talk. Okay, so it took 20 years about to find this delivery vehicle of TED Talks, of thinking like, wow, yeah, that's me. Like, that's what I'm going to do. Like, I'm going to stand on the red dot and I'm going to deliver my talk in 20 minutes or whatever. And then, here I am, like a solid 11 years later, being activated, and I talk about this in the first part that I shared at the Sacred Circle, but being activated to finally be ready to get my proposal together, to give a TED Talk. And the reason why then I ended up attending TEDx KC as an audience member, and that happened on August 2nd. And so then the rest of the video is me sharing like how that event was so impactful for me as far as living this dream of doing what I've been dreaming of for almost 30 years, and how the last couple of weeks have played out then with this giant impact that I received at the actual event and what unfolded in the aftermath of that. So if you're into it at any point, please leave a like on the video. I would love to hear your comments down below. I would imagine that this story is highly relatable, whether you care about giving a TED Talk or not. We all have a dream inside of us of something that we hold in our heart, and maybe we peek in on it from time to time. Maybe we look at it every day. Maybe we aren't even sure exactly what it is, but we can kind of feel the vibe of like, there's something in there. And how long that can take to unfold, right? Long and short, because in the grand scheme of things, 30 years is like basically nothing. But for me, as a 36-year-old, 30 years feels really long. Okay, it feels like my entire life has been headed to this moment, including even this moment of getting to share this story with you. So thank you so much for being here. And without further ado, let's jump back in time to the Sacred Circle, just a couple of days before the Leo new moon, and the morning before I would attend TEDx KC for the first time. I am very excited as we have the Leo new moon taking place this weekend. So our new moon cycle, moon and sun coming together in the sign of Leo, the sign of creativity, the sign of birth, the sign of our life force, the sign of, just what is it that you want to create in your life, with your life, all kinds of questions stirring around us. And a couple of things that are just like really present with me that I want to share, and then we will dive in to open it up into full conversation. The first thing is with the new moon and full moon cycle, this concept of like, we plant the seeds at the new moon. We take a seed that has like all the potential to become the full-blown thing, and we put it in the ground, and then nature's cycle takes its course, right? So like the things that exist in our life right now are seeds that were planted a long time ago, months, years in some cases. And the seeds that we place into the ground today we aren't going to be able to walk out into the garden tomorrow and be like, where the hell are the carrots? Why aren't they up here yet? You know, I put those seeds in the ground. Why hasn't it grown into fruit that I can eat now? Like the fruit that we're eating now, the things that we're harvesting now are a result of who we were 6 to 12 months ago, or maybe even longer than that. And the things that we're cultivating at this time are going to pay off in the future. There's like a
Yes, they
delay
are.
in the physical reality that is really important to keep in mind because just always good to understand how nature actually works and to not spend much energy fighting against like what just is real. But also we're entering into a period of time where it may look like your efforts aren't paying off. And it's important to remember that the things like the effort that we're investing today is going to pay off, but potentially longer into the future. I looked up not too long ago, like what seed or like what kind of fruit tree takes the longest to like actually grow and make fruit. And some of them take like years and years to like grow into something that can produce even one apple that you can like take off the tree and eat that thing. So,
Mhm.
right? Like, and how does that tie back then to Leo and to like what it is that you're creating and potentially how many years you've been moving towards like wanting to make the thing and you're still sitting there looking at a tree that has no fruit on it, thinking like, when am I gonna get to eat some fruit? Like I freaking want some fruit. And so, yeah, to just be with that process and the nature, the natural cycles of things. Um, but the other piece that I really wanted to share with you guys, and this will be my opening share for I want to hear what's going on with each of you. Um, Tonight, I bought a ticket for myself to go to Kansas City and go to the TEDx KC event. So I am going to sit in an auditorium of 1,800 people and watch as 9 speakers give their TEDx talks. The theme
Whoa.
of
That sounds amazing.
God, you guys, like divine timing is delivering me straight into this place. Um, so the theme of the event, the theme of like the 9 speakers is navigating the unknown, which like couldn't be any more perfect for like just where I'm at in my life and just in general the work that I do with people of like transformation and change. And that's always stepping into the unknown, right? When we leave behind the old things. So yeah, I am so freaking excited. And I actually found my way to buying the ticket because I have seen myself, I don't know, 1,000 times, like on the red dot giving a TEDx talk myself, been seeing this
Yay.
vision for like a decade at least. Um, and that tree has not grown fruit yet. Okay. Like
Mhm.
we're still in the nurturing the tree and, you know, pruning the tree and trimming the tree and taking care of the tree and keeping the tree alive so that it can grow into something that can actually put off fruit. Um, and so I found my way to the ticket because I finally was like, I think I'm ready to give a TEDx talk. Let me go looking for like where do I do that? Like, where's the nearest TEDx event? Like, you know, these little micro initiations of stepping into the unknown. Let me even go look at where I might do this. Um, and so I land on their website and find that the deadline to submit proposals um, is like in January. And so they closed that several months ago for the event that's happening in August. This was like back in June. Um, but it was like I landed on the website. It was like 10:18 a.m. and the tickets for today went on sale at 10 a.m. that morning that I'm like landing on the site and just the divine
Checking it out.
alignment. What was that, Janine?
Yes, just exactly. Divine
Yes.
timing.
Yes. It was like too on time to not just like whip out my debit card and buy a freaking ticket. And then it was super interesting because I kept trying to pick my seat and it kept telling me, like, you can't have that seat. You have to buy 2 tickets to have that, like, to book these 2 seats. And so it was like the 4th seat I picked. It finally was like, okay, yeah, you can have that seat. So I'm super excited to see who's going to be sitting next to me in this seat. We're going to hang out for 3 hours and watch these presentations. Um, but yeah, so that's tonight. And my whole vision of the like going is like to sit in that room with the 1,800 people and to project myself. I got a ticket in the 7th row to project myself onto the stage as the people give their talks and to be in the energy of that space, to like hold it in my body and to think about like 12 months from now. I mean, that could be me. I submit my
Yeah.
proposal by January. I mean, I get selected. Like, that could be me, you know?
Yes.
Like, that tree could be having fruit on it August of next year, 12 more months. And at this point, after a decade of seeing the vision, 12 months feels like not hardly any
Not much.
time at all. So
That's right.
yeah, I am so excited to go tonight to TEDxKC. I'm also very excited that we are having Sacred Circle back on Friday, so that tomorrow, I mean, it's over at like 9:30, and then I have to drive an hour and a half to get home. So it's be a very late night for me. And tomorrow I have booked out for potato mode. Just gonna like totally rest and recharge.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, I'm so excited for what it is that I've wanted to create my whole life, where I'm at right now in that journey, even, just cultivating that intention, even when on the surface it doesn't always look like that's like coming to fruition, but there is such a long cycle with some of these things that's okay. That's okay. Like I
For
haven't
sure.
been ready.
Congrats, Carly. Congrats. That's
Oh,
wonderful.
thank you. Thank
That's
you.
so exciting. That's so exciting. That
Like
gives me like full body chills.
to even go sit in the audience feels
Ah,
like a step along
yeah.
the
It is.
journey. I'm so pumped to see like soaking that energy into my system, what that does as far as inspiring and clarifying like what even is the message, the concept of my talk, because that's what's continuously held me back of like, I don't know what I would say. You only get 20 minutes and I could ramble for hours and
Oh
hours
my
and hours
gosh,
about
that's
so many
so
things.
exciting.
Like, what do you want to
Hmm.
leave with? What's the one
Yeah.
line that like if they remember it for the rest of their lives, you have no control over who's going to see it once it gets posted on the internet, but like you have those 20 minutes with those 1,800 people to listen to you and to like leave them with something, a seed that could grow into what?
Yes.
Like, what seed do you want to plant? And I
Hmm.
just am already so inspired. So I can't even imagine going there tonight, soaking up the energy. I'm very excited. I think that's probably pretty obvious.
As it should be.
Dude,
Yes.
it's very fun. This is my idea of a good time. Well worth the late night adventure, 3 hour round trip
Mhm.
of driving. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So, in this part of the video, I want to tell you the story of what happened at the TEDxKC event and the various ways that it impacted me. Some of them expected, some of them not expected. And then I also want to go through what has been the aftermath since then, because this is August 14th that I'm recording this, and the actual event was on, I think, the 2nd now. Yeah, the 2nd. So it's been almost 2 weeks ago that I went and sat in the audience and like did the thing where I project myself up on stage and I sit in the audience like full of people, like almost 2,000 people in this room, and just feel it in my body. Like, can I hold this energy? And the effects, same as like during the event, the effects since then, some of them have been expected, some of them have been unexpected. So it's working. The plan is working. Let's do long story short. That's what I would say. It's like I am more ready than ever before to move forward with submitting my proposal for my TED Talk. And it has been not tumultuous, that's a little bit too dramatic as far as like how it's felt, but like kind of like that. Like there's been some ups and downs. There's definitely been some light activations where like new inspiration and like new awareness, new power, new courage, all of that has come online. And there have been some shadows to face. And so as far as like getting to the event and going inside, sitting down in my seat, it's time to start. The very first speaker was by far the most, maybe not by far, but was the most memorable. And he taught me some lessons. He taught me some lessons about the talk itself. And that's really like the vantage point that I was watching. Like, yes, I want to hear their talk and I want to hear their message. But I'm also interested in this more meta perspective of like, how are they approaching their talk? How are they handling delivering their message and standing on the stage and pacing themselves through their talk? And so the things that I learned from this first dude, he spoke the most slowly of anyone that I watched on stage. He had an embodiment about him where you could just almost like get the vibe that like, this is exactly who this dude is. He is not putting on a performance. He brought himself out onto the stage and he told his stories. He delivered his message. And it was very memorable for that reason. There was like such a level of slow and steady, and the message itself, the points that he made were very distilled and very simple. And there were examples that he used to like support what it was that he was putting forth. Like TED is all about like ideas worth sharing. So like nobody's up there necessarily presenting facts. It's just like a perspective or like a certain way of thinking about things. And so his was the most memorable for me. And that was really eye-opening as far as like, as I have thought in the past about creating my TED Talk and like being ready to deliver this message, part of what has stood in my way has always been the level of complexity that I naturally want to bring to it. I want to cram 36 years worth of what I've learned in my life. I want to cram it in 20 minutes and like teach them everything in 20 minutes. Like you can see how like intense my energy gets when I think about like, I want to say everything. And the way he said just like almost one thing and kind of came at it from this side and then came at it from this side and then here's an example and then come at it from this side and here's an example, and it was all just this one thing. You walked away like, for the rest of my life, I'm going to know the one thing. And the way he handled it with simplicity was really masterful. And that level of embodiment where he knew his message. He wasn't trying to prove to anyone that they should do anything. Like there wasn't a reaching or striving or approving of himself. Not that I got that like a whole lot from the other speakers, but some of them definitely dip into this territory of like trying to convince. Like they're being convincing, they're persuading, they're giving like a persuasive, I mean, if you ever took speech class, like in high school or college, like persuasion is one type of speaking. And those did not resonate as well as him simply talking through his level of embodying the message that he had created. So that was the first speaker. I think this guy was third. And I learned something tremendous from this dude. Okay, I freaking loved his talk. Again, not because of the message. The message, it had something to do with taking photographs. I barely remember what he talked about, but something really important happened during this guy's talk multiple times. And it just was so medicinal for the perfectionist in me that again has this like, just high bar of it's gotta be exceptional. And that's the only way I'm going to do the thing. That's the only way I'm going to feel ready to go do the thing, is like if I think I can just like blow it out of the water, you know, like, dude, let me know down below if you could relate. I'm sure I'm not the only one who has this really high bar of expectation of like how my performance needs to happen. And so this guy, the medicine he gave me, he was probably the second most memorable for me, actually, because of the quality of this medicine, where multiple times, I'm going to say like maybe 4 times, he lost his train of thought, totally forgot what he was talking about, like totally lost the plot of like his talk that he's trying to deliver. And he turns around like to look off stage, and he's like listening so that they can like give him his line, like kind of prompt him of like, here's where you are in your talk, and like you need to like, this is the next part. And the very first time it happened, he's like, I forget the dude's name, Ed maybe or something like that. He's like, I can't hear you, Ed, and like louder, and you could hear the guy from behind the curtain like tell him his next line. He's like, oh yeah, thank you, and like goes again, forgets again, gets the line, goes again, forgets again, gets the line, goes again, forgets again, gets the line, delivers the rest of his talk. Okay, I needed to see that. I needed to see that. Like, I cannot tell you how healing it was to watch him stand on stage and lose his train of thought, like lose track of like what he was doing while he was doing it. And somebody helped him get back on track, and he kept going. And then it happened again, and then it happened again, and then it happened again. And like, there was such a revolution of my inner judge of like, see, we don't have to be perfect. Like, not even a little bit, like not even close to perfect. And the other piece that really wants to come through here that like was just a reinforcement of something I already knew, but like this helped me to know it on an even deeper level, is like when like, and I've worked a lot on like the teacher archetype. Like I've resonated as a teacher like almost my whole life. And the teacher archetype, like there can be this shadow side, the ego side of like, the teacher's job is to teach. The teacher's job is to say the words that will engender understanding on the part of the student. That's the job of the teacher. So you better get your words right. You better get your message like in sync. And like, again, we see this perfectionist, like super high standards, like bar that I've put on myself. And the work I've done on the teacher archetype is around, that's actually not the teacher's job. The teacher's job is not to teach. The teacher's job is to hold space where a student can learn, period. And what this allows is that it gives permission to the student to be empowered in their own learning. Meaning, when I sit down in an event, and I've practiced this multiple times for any of the events that I've hosted this year, I've been practicing over and over and over again. When I open up that space, when I click start on the Zoom and I welcome in the participants from the waiting room and I start doing my presentation, I start teaching my lesson, whatever, there is a detachment process that I am practicing of, it is not about what I say. It's about what the student is ready to learn. And what I say will play a role. The way I hold space will play a role in the student being able to come into their own knowing. And the beauty of this is that number one, it takes the pressure off of me to say the perfect thing. And I need that, as you can probably tell. I need that like an oxygen tank, like life support, like anything that helps me take the pressure off myself, like I'll take it. But the other thing that it really does is like give empowerment to the student. Dude, like well, and let me tell a mini story that will help illuminate this point. And the reason it's so important for the teacher not to take responsibility for what the student learns is like this happens every single time, but like this was really pronounced, where I did a session and I had a VIP room afterwards, where after the session we'll go into the VIP room and we'll have like an open conversation where like everybody gets to speak, everybody gets to like share their insights, share what really stood out to them, or like reminded them of this, or like they're processing this, and like we can dive deeper into it, whatever you personally got out of the session. And I did the session. I felt like it went pretty well. I felt really good about what I offered. We go into the VIP room and the first person who shares gushes and gushes and gushes and like is floating, is like literally lifted by the material and like the insights, and like her higher self like fed her insight after insight after insight after insight on top of what I offered. Like it wasn't she took what I said and like that was the magic. It was like what I said opened a space inside of her where her higher self could come in and have this dialogue with her inside the bigger conversation that I was creating with me and the participants on the Zoom. And she just raved, like went on for like 10 minutes about this and this and this and this. And my ego self ate that shit up. Oh my God, I loved it so much. And then my ego self got bitch slapped across the face as far as like, don't get too hooked on that because that's not real. That wasn't you. That wasn't you. That was her and her connection with her higher self. That was her empowered and ready to learn. That was her in her open mind, able to download these insights from her higher self. Her raving about everything that went down in that session, that was her. That was her. That's what I learned that day, because the second person who shared was like, yeah, I didn't really get anything out of it. I already knew that. I mean, I guess I appreciate the reminder, but yeah, I didn't really get anything out of that. And that phrase, I didn't get anything out of that, that was triggering for me. Like, I'll be real honest with you. And that was part of what sent me spiraling in on this teacher archetype contemplation, was this event of like, I said the same fucking words on Zoom and one person is having a life-changing experience and one person got nothing. What is that? What is that about? Because your performance just got two very different grades. And so measuring our performance, there's actually 3 grades, because I gave myself a pretty good grade because I was in my flow, I channeled, I landed the points that I wanted to land. I had even like enriched examples that I had not planned to share that came to me in the moment. And I told those stories and I landed those points. Like, I felt like I did a good job. So there's my first grade. And then student A had this magical experience. Student B could have skipped it and would have been just as enlightened as she was before, you know? And so it just like really got me thinking about, what is the teacher's job? And when the teacher's job is to control what it is that the student is there to learn, everybody loses. The teacher's job is to hold space. The teacher's job is to stand there and deliver and let each and every single student get whatever it is that they are ready to get out of it. So going back full circle to where we started, which we probably forgot at this point, we're talking about the dude who can't remember his talk. We're talking about like him forgetting, him messing it up. making a mistake. What even is a mistake? Who fucking knows? And needing someone to help him, needing someone to give him his line. And as the student sitting in his audience, that's what I needed to learn. I needed a lesson in humility and what it looks like to, in my standards, in my like super perfectionistic standards, he failed on stage. And it was one of the most powerful moments of that entire evening for me. It was one of the biggest, juiciest permission slips of like, you don't gotta be perfect. Nobody expects that of you. And actually going up there and failing might be exactly what your students need to see. You don't know. You don't know. You have no idea what those students are ready to learn. You have no idea what kind of day they're coming out of. You have no idea what kind of a life chapter they're coming out of. You don't know. The teacher doesn't know. The teacher can make their best effort, can give themselves something that they themselves can be proud of. That's best case scenario. And in that moment, I hope that dude was super proud of himself, the way that he kept going. I mean, he did not lose enthusiasm when he needed prompt. He went on and like he kept his energy going. Like I think in that moment, my empathy was like, if I put myself in those shoes, like I would have felt worse and worse and worse and worse and worse about myself. And the way he didn't, the way he just like, oh yeah. And then like told more of his story. And then he's like, I was just like, I love you. I love you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your example. Okay, so that was that guy, like super powerful. And then the other one that I want to tell you about, and then I'm going to circle back and tell another little story about the while I was there part of like, the other one was an incredible talk. I mean, she wove together her threads of like her own personal story, what that, like her family's story, kind of like the generational lineage that she herself is coming through, the work that has led her to do, and the state of the US political climate. Okay. And she wove all of that together in this like elegant, masterful, engaging, magnetic way, where the deeper she took us, the more I just like leaned in and was like mesmerized by what she was doing. And the message that she had was so moving, like literally moving. She got a standing ovation. And I was one of the first people off my chair when she was done. And when she was done, she was so precious because like some of them, it was a really interesting little sidebar. Some of them stood there and like, yes, applaud me. Thank you, applaud me. And like, they kind of like, yes, okay. And like, then they would walk off. And like the first dude, the really embodied dude, the totally authentic seemingly dude, he finished and turned around and left. And like, so his applause was like at his back / the stage is empty and like we're applauding for him. And she pretty much did the same thing. She like finished her talk, turned around and left. And the host guy was coming back out about the time that the standing ovation started, like was like everybody in that freaking auditorium was off their seat. Like her speech was moving. Like our bodies responded by having to stand up and clap. I mean, we gave her that standing ovation for a solid minute. Count out 60 seconds. Like watch a minute tick by. It's a long time. And so the host dude, he like goes back to the back of the stage and he's like this. And the next speaker, it was so funny. The next speaker comes out thinking that like he's motioning to him, like it's his turn. And so then he's like, no, you go back and like, come back, like to the lady who did the talk. And They bring her back out there, and we gave her that standing ovation for a full minute at least. And she stood there and she cried, and I cried. Like, it was such a beautiful moment. It was such, like, I'm getting full body chills, and I just want to like fucking break down and cry right now, because it was such a beautiful, powerful example of the ideal of what's possible when one person will walk forward to the front of the room, take a hold of a microphone, and allow themselves to be witnessed in their moment, in their story, in their artistry, in her weaving of her story and her threads that she alone has access to. Nobody else has access to your threads. The only one who can tell your story is you. That's it. And her standing up there and delivering the message she delivered was so moving. It was one of the brightest moments of the entire evening, as far as like just the emotional release, the collective emotional release of like just getting to stand amidst 2,000 people who were just as deeply touched by this message. Like, there was such a feeling of solidarity and community with these people that I've never met them. I'll probably never see them again. Didn't matter, because in that moment we were connected. And how did we get connected? She fucking connected us. She stood up there and she did her thing, and she connected us. And you better believe that in this brightest moment of the evening, my perfectionist was the loudest. Was like, see, this is what you need to do. This is what has to happen. Like, we need to move them. We need to, and again, I'm back in that shadow of the teacher archetype, taking responsibility for how the audience responds, taking responsibility for what they receive from what I say. And the thing about it is like, you know, the dude who forgot his lines over and over again, he didn't get a standing ovation. You know, nobody else did. Like, only she did. But that doesn't mean it wasn't impactful. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to remember that for the rest of my life. You know, and same with the dude who gave his talk, and it was super simple and he talked real slow. Like, I mean, it was memorable. And so was that. So like, there was value in all of them. There was value in every single, and like, that's why there's not one speaker. There were 12, you know, because every single person has something different to stand on stage and do something different. And in that difference, everybody receives something different, theoretically. Theoretically, she inspired something that was unifying. She was able to hit on a thread of common humanity, and in that thread, she found it inside all of us. And we all had to stand up and say, yes, I felt that. And it was just absolutely gorgeous and so intimidating, as far as like, my perfectionist wants me to inspire a standing ovation. Yeah, why don't you just go ahead and do that? And it's like, that's just not even a thing. Like, you can't control the audience's reaction. Like, that's not your job. That's not your job. And as she stood up there and told her story, she was also very embodied. She was also very poised and very, I mean, she's a professional radio host, has been for quite a while, and talks about these topics, like her core message, like the end point, maybe not necessarily her lineage, her family story, but like the end point of her message. Like, this is what she does for a living. And she, I mean, does it very well and has practiced for years. And like, there was a level of mastery in her delivering this message that she also was very embodied with. And so, like, you know, the part of me that understands practice, and like, this first TED Talk that I do is not going to be the only TED Talk that I ever do. And, you know, there's part of me that's like, dude, like, if you get a standing O on the first one, like, good luck finding the courage to get up there again and do it again, because the fear of disappointment is real. I also want to make a video, I have notes right here, for like disappointment and the way it works in our body, and like on and on. It's going to be super fun video coming soon. But yeah, that woman inspiring a standing ovation, and the way my shadow self clamped down on me as far as like must deliver standing ovation worthy talk. It was powerful medicine to compare and contrast with the dude who couldn't remember his lines. Okay, I needed both of those. I needed to see that like your talk has value, no matter, like, your talk has value like above and beyond even what you say. Like, I get so in my head, like I said earlier, I get so in my head about wanting to cram every piece of wisdom I've ever found, like, down into this 20-minute talk. And, like, the guy that I learned so much from, that, like, I received probably some of the best medicine from, like, it wasn't even in what he said. It was how he presented it. And even more than that, how he forgot what he was presenting. Like, your talk has value. Your presentation has value. Like, go sing your song and people will get what they need to get from it. And all of that is none of your business. All of that is none of your business. And the other one, I guess I do want to tell one more story. The other one that was right before the standing O, the presenter before, she read her talk. I've never seen this before. Like, I've watched, I don't even know, hundreds of TED Talks on YouTube in my day. And this lady, she got up there with a packet of papers and she just kept flipping pages as she read, very animatedly. I mean, I'll give her that. Like, she was pretty good at like bringing the words to life off the page, like in the moment. But she read her talk off her paper. I mean, she just read it. She didn't have it memorized. She didn't present it. You know, like, the dude who forgot his lines, like, at least he had his memorized, you know? So like, there was like this widening out of the spectrum of like, how good do you need to be to go stand on that stage? And that goes back to another piece that I want to tell you from like the moment I sat down. This was before the event even started. This part was when they finally opened the auditorium. And as you walked into the auditorium, they gave you they gave you the little book and a pen, and there's pages at the end that are open where like you can take notes. But what else is in this book are the speaker bios. Okay, so like, great, you're sitting down in the auditorium and like you're here and like the thing hasn't started yet. So keep yourself entertained and read through your speaker bios. Awesome. So I did. And this was probably the loudest, hardest shadow moment that I had during the entire event and afterwards. Like, this was by far the hardest part, was sitting down in my seat with the book of speaker bios, which includes their name, their self-given title in many cases. I mean, they've got like one dude who talked about like the future of pet food. It was a very interesting talk, something I've never really thought about before. He like one part of his title was pet savior. Okay, so they're just making shit up, right? Just naming themselves some things and like that's their title. And then like a few paragraphs of like, who is this person and what are they about? What do they do? Like, you know, bio. I read the bios and I had a really hard 10 minutes until the thing started, where I was like really with my shadow, who is saying to me, who the hell are you to get in the middle of this group of people? You haven't done even a fraction of what these people have done. Why would you, this is the real low blow that part of me dealt me, was like, why would you even apply and potentially take up one of these spots from somebody like this? Why would you get in their way and prevent the audience from getting to hear from the person whose spot you took. How dare you? How dare you think you belong here? Ow. Like, it fucking hurt. It hurt my feelings. Like, I hurt my feelings, like, reading those bios. And so when the dude stood up there, the first guy, he's like so embodied, he's so chill, delivers a super simple talk. I was like, I started to open up to like, he just made a whole talk out of like one point and did it very beautifully. Like that was really good. A couple guys later, guy can't remember his lines. And I'm like, okay. So the bio book is not an indication of like what they're actually capable of as a speaker, as a presenter, as like an effective message deliverer. You know, like the bio doesn't actually indicate like what you're capable of on stage. And like, because they've got awards listed, they've got like all of their things of like all the things they're most proud of that they're like putting in their bio. And then here she is like reading her speech off of paper, you know, like I just was like, So, but that moment of like, who are you? You don't belong up there. Like, why would you think that your message is worth hearing? And that's why one of the pieces of inspiration that I wrote down, which is what this page is full of, one of the pieces is whose voice matters? ? Who should stand up there and say some things? They only have 12 spots. Who should get those spots? And my systems mind, my scientist, my mathematician, starts working out the variables, you know, like, well, what are the selection criteria? How would we decide who's going to stand on stage? And the thing about that is the same as the teacher archetype that we talked about a little bit ago, with like, you don't know what the students need to hear. You don't know. You can only predict based on like your intuitive sense of like their speech proposal, like that this would make an interesting, thought-provoking 20 minutes, you know, and you're doing your best to pick out some of those. And beyond that, you like as the speech coordinating committee, like you don't get to control the quality of delivery of the speakers you pick. And you also don't get to control what the audience needs to hear. You don't get to control what the audience takes from each speech. Like you don't have any control over any of that. And even more than don't have control, you can't predict. You can't predict what the audience needs to hear. And so how what is that word? It's not coming to me. What is it? Elusive is maybe like one piece of what I'm trying to say, but like, yeah, how elusive this process, how informal, how unscientific, how like, who's the judge of what's valuable and what's not valuable? And how can that committee even be the judge when you have 2,000 people who are going to sit in the audience and listen? You know, like it started to disintegrate the illusion that I had of like, of course, when you put 12 speakers on stage, like there will be cream that rises to the top. But even that, it's like, this is my personal experience. And you see how little I've even shared about what the guys, like what the speakers talked about and how much I was there, which you heard at the beginning. Like I'm there because I intend to stand on that stage. I'm like looking at the furry carpet of the red dot and looking at their shoes and looking at the way they plant their feet or not, the way they pace back and forth. I'm looking at their presentation style, because every single new speaker, I projected myself, I projected my energy onto the stage to stand where they were standing. And I felt the empowerment unlocking inside of me every single time I did that, as I imagined these 2,000 people looking at me over and over and over and over again, and feeling more and more and more comfortable with that prospect of like, yeah, I could totally do that. I could totally go stand up there and deliver something that I felt good about. And since then, like we'll spend just a little bit of time here talking about since then, because a multitude of things have happened, right? So like this page of inspiration, this was written while I was at the event, and on the way home, I drove the entire 90 minutes in silence, which is not something I typically do. And I just sat there and like wove all of this together, like all of the medicine that I got out of the standing ovation and feeling together with the audience, and all the medicine I got out of the guy who couldn't remember his speech, and all the medicine I got out of the lady who just read hers off the paper, didn't even try to memorize it. Like, I mean, there was so much medicine that I just like absorbed into my being. And towards the end of my drive home, like the last half hour or so, I really started to be inspired with like the beginning of my talk. Like I even at one point, like the last 10 minutes, I like just started talking, like just started like delivering this thing that started with everybody worships something. Like that was just so alive inside of me. And so I did a talk in my car to no one that started with the words, everybody worships something. And I was like working it out, how I would like want to deliver that TED Talk. Same as always, it's a crisis of choice of like, I have so much I would want to say, and picking and distilling down a singular message is my challenge always. And mostly in these almost 2 weeks since then, I have not thought about it at all. I have been very overwhelmed by taking this inspiration and creating something that my super high bar perfectionistic self, even though I have medicine for her, she still has high expectations of me. She's got real high standards. And taking this inspiration and alchemizing it into something that I personally am proud of and can be happy with, I have mostly just ignored it and avoided it and haven't gone there until this morning. And this morning I was talking to a friend, and we were having this amazing conversation, as we so often do, where we go meta about like so many different topics. Like, for example, this morning we were talking about understanding. What is understanding? Like, how do we understand understanding? Okay, that was like the genesis of this conversation. And it ended up meandering around to a point where I was telling her my story about when I was 27 or I was 26 at the time, almost 27. And I had been largely intolerant and even hateful and loathing towards my own emotions. And I sat in this training and we took an emotional intelligence assessment, and I got back this assessment that said I was like the most emotionally intelligent person in my cohort of the training group, and yada, yada, yada. And I told her this story like in visceral detail, like this experience like almost 10 years ago is like burned in my consciousness. Okay. And actually just over 10 years ago, because I am 36 now and I was 26. No, just over 9 years ago. Anyways, doesn't matter. I told her this story that is like alive in my body. Like I can remember this moment like it was yesterday, because it was so visceral. It was so like nauseating at the time. Like full story doesn't really matter. But anyway, so she reflected back to me. She's like, I was so engaged, just enthralled with the telling of that story. Like I felt like I was really there. I felt like I was like the speaker, and like I was watching you on stage, and like she reflected this back to me. And that just like, again, opened up this place in my consciousness where the inspiration could turn more into a creation that I could actually share. The realization that landed is, I think, again, the bar comes down. I think the TED Talk is easier than I'm trying to make it. I think it's even easier than I'm imagining. And that's why I can't do it, because I'm making it so hard. I'm overcomplicating something that's actually effortless. And that's what's blocking off the flow of creating the thing. And so at this point, here I am almost 2 weeks later. At this point, I am almost positive that this will be the story, that this, turning point of demonizing my emotions to opening to the potential value of emotions, like even just letting that door come open a crack, the turning point that was in my life, and the before and after, that would be an incredible starting point for my talk. And inside of that story is so many different directions that I could take it, and so many of them are on this piece of paper. So are included in the original inspiration that I wrote down the evening of the event, where I was like, oh yeah, and I want to talk about this piece, and I want to talk about this piece, and I want to talk about this piece. And in the natural avoiding of the thing that was overwhelming to me, I come naturally through fun and through friendship and through the beauty of mirroring in relationship. I come to this story that actually includes a demonstrated version of so many of the pieces that I wanted included, and gives me a foundation of telling that story and then making the point, landing the various points that it is that I want to land, all of which so eloquently, so elegantly weaving their way back to owning authenticity. If you've been around this channel for a while, that what lights my soul on fire is individual empowerment, is me being the person I was born to be, that I came here on purpose to be, and you doing the same. Us living in our individual power of our authentic self, and the reasons why we don't, and the process of unlocking that, and the beautiful paradise that it is to live in your authentic integrity. That is my work on this planet, is distilling into authenticity myself day after day after day after day. And you see from the telling of this story that yes, there are high points of unlocking your power, having these beautiful light-filled, heart-filled moments. There are also the demons at the gate. The parts of you that will criticize, that will say things that totally like a pin in a balloon, just deflate you in an instant. Who do you think you are? Facing those thoughts and facing those shadow parts of you who do not believe in you. And whose voice is that, right? The part that rejection in early life, and not just the overarching theme of rejection, but specifically what about you was rejected, and how that plays a part into the conditioned version of your life that you live, which was very much the before, 26 and before, and then the authentic version of your life that you live, where you stop locking that rejected part of you in a closet somewhere, down in the basement, down in the cellar, bury it in some concrete, get it back out. Not only get it out, but let it live inside of you as the authentic part of you that it is, and to operate from that wholeness of you would not possess that part if it did not have value. Period. You have it for a reason. It has value, and it's meant to be understood, not rejected, not locked in a basement somewhere. But it is the most natural thing for us to be rejected by someone who doesn't understand the value of who we are, and for us to then self-reject and lock that part away, and for life to bring us back around through whatever divine appointments and unfolding of circumstance that unlock that power so that we can integrate that part of ourselves and experience the wholeness we were born to live. So thank you so much for hanging out with me. It has obviously been my pleasure to get to retell these stories and get to share with you this creative journey of something that I have been planted this seed when I was 7. I've been nurturing this seed. I have been nurturing this tree for almost 30 years of my life. I've been practicing for this day that hasn't even arrived yet for 30 years. 30 years of practice is about to culminate next year when I give my first TED Talk. And this process of unlocking my authentic self, of unlocking the parts of me that had been rejected, so then I learned to self-reject so that I didn't express that part, and bringing that part back online, actually improving the quality of my life such that I healed depression. Like, this was the turning point. This was the beginning of like the 2 or 3 year turning point that led to my chronic depression, 15 years worth of chronic depression being healed. Through what? Through authenticity. So then several years later, to develop a channel, to develop like a mission statement of owning authenticity, like, and have this be my work that I do like on a weekly basis, like, just the delight that I feel at my life as I currently know it, and you being here to share in these stories with me. I freaking love it. I would love to hear from you down below in the comments. I so appreciate your presence in this space. Until next time, I do hope that you are taking such good care of yourself, of your whole self, including those parts of you that you are rejecting, that you still have locked in a basement. We all have them. I still have them. I hear them pounding. I hear them desiring to get out and be free. And little by little, I free them. I allow them to come back into the wholeness of who I am. And I hope I have no control, but I hope that you're doing the same. Take good care, sweet friend. I'll see you soon.